Hello and welcome to Wisconsin in Focus, powered by the Center Square. I'm JD Davidson, the Center Square Midwest Regional Editor. Joining me today is Ben Yount, Wisconsin contributor for the Center Square. Ben, how are things?
I am waiting for the giant icicles to thaw off the side of my house. I'll be excited when they do, but I just hope they don't do it overnight. One fell, scared the dog to death. It took an hour to get this dog to stop barking at the ice that was now laying in front of my front door.
That was my house yesterday. I felt throughout the day there was automatic weapon fire in the neighborhood. We are recording this on Thursday, January 25th, 2024. Ben, Wisconsin Governor Tony Evers was back in front of the legislature this week delivering his annual State of the State address for the sixth time. This one seemed awfully similar to the other five. What were some of the highlights?
Well, like we've seen from this governor in years past, he really wants to do a couple of things. He wants to legalize marijuana, though he didn't spend very much time talking about that. He wants to spend more money on public schools in the University of Wisconsin, though that wasn't the main focus of this. This governor wants to expand Medicaid. He wants to invest in government, as he puts it. And he took a couple of partisan shots talking about redistricting and Tammy Baldwin, who's the Democratic senator who's up for election this year. And he eventually got to some of the things that people can agree with, figuring out a way to deal with PFAS pollution in the state's water supply and fixing the damn roads, as he likes to say. But if you listened to the first 5 State of the State speeches, you did not need to hang on every word for number 6 because it was very, very similar. And at the end of the day, the big takeaway was free birth control pills for women who are on Medicaid, as well as maybe free Plan B without a prescription for some women in the state.
That's interesting. Other than those 2 things, I think you could take the first part of what you said and cut and paste it into 49 other State of the State addresses, Republican or Democrat. A lot of broad-ranging thoughts to reach as many people as possible, but very little meat.
Yeah, a lot of the conversation, particularly on Twitter from pundits, the sort of state house groups that follow along, the criticism was this was not a very adventurous speech. You have one time a year to come before the legislature, and this is where the governor could propose any number of plans. Big plans. Let's build a new this. Let's reinvest in that. Don't forget, the story we're writing today is that there's a $3.5 billion budget surplus. The governor could have proposed all manners of ways to spend that money. And the most he came up with was a tiny expansion of one Medicaid service, contraception, and then the sort of generic go back to the well, the Obamacare expansion that Wisconsin has never signed up for. And I think it was Van Wangard, the Republican out of Racine, who called the governor a broken record. The quote we have: "Every year his speech is nothing more than asking for blank checks to expand government without guide rails, more money for public schools, more money for bureaucrats, virtue signaling over problem solving, subsidizing childcare companies rather than helping people pay for childcare." He said he's almost plagiarizing this speech from last year and the year before that and the year before that and the year before that. This was the line that got some attention. While the words in the speech may change every January, the message doesn't. He's devoid of new ideas, a bystander in his own administration. That is a constant criticism from Republicans at the Capitol, that this is a governor who doesn't seem interested in working with Republicans and really doesn't have much of an agenda. He'll go and lay this out on his State of the State speech, but then there'll be very little follow-up. There's very little work, even with Democratic legislators, to get done in policy terms what he lays out in his broad speech. And so, yeah, this is one of the handfuls of times that the governor makes an appearance at the Capitol, and almost as soon as the speech is folded and put back in his pocket, it is dismissed. The difference this year is that this is a governor who's proven that he doesn't need to work with lawmakers because this may be the last year that Republicans have a majority in the state capitol. And I think that he's more than willing to wait to see what he gets when the new legislative district maps are drawn.
Sure. Are there any Democrats in the state legislature who are willing to carry the water for him on any of these broader ideas?
Well, part of the problem is that there's a unified Republican Party that is going to say no. That going back to the Scott Walker days, Wisconsin fought the Medicaid expansion. One, because if you actually take a look, and we can get into Badger Care, one of these podcasts, there really is no coverage gap here in Wisconsin. That Badger Care and Badger Care Plus, the programs for low-income families, moms, kids, sick grandmas, people with profound disabilities, they are all already covered under Badger Care here in Wisconsin. And really the Obamacare expansion largely does focus on single, childless men who are able to work. This doesn't count for people who are, single moms or people who have disabilities. No. They are already covered. The expansion that the governor wants would follow along the lines of what Illinois and a number of other blue states did. And as you see in Illinois and a number of other blue states, the cost of that expansion is getting more and more expensive. And so while there may be some Democratic lawmakers who would be more than willing to be the floor leader for the governor, the mountain is insurmountable. The Republicans have said no time and time again, which makes that criticism of this, there are no new ideas here, even more poignant, that whatever it is that this governor is pitching has already been resoundingly rejected by the Republican lawmakers. So the governor may have come back out and just said, hey guys, same as last year. Oh, and by the way, we flipped the court. So enjoy your power while you have it.
Yeah. Real quickly, is this shaping up to be another legislative year of no legislation?
Yes, very much so. Wisconsin does a budget every other year, the biennium. And so this year there's no budget. There is an election in the fall. The expectation is that both the Senate and the Assembly will pass whatever they want to pass this month and the first couple of weeks of next, and then they'll go home to get reelected. After all, many of them are probably going to be running in brand new districts, and so they're going to need all of the time they have. To give you an idea as to sort of how busy the legislative agenda is, the Assembly is in today, and they're voting, among other things, they're voting on a change to the state's divorce law that would get rid of the 6-month remarriage moratorium. Wisconsin has a 6-month waiting period from the time your divorce ends to the time you can marry your next spouse. And they are going to clarify the rules for filleted fish, that right now, if your fish fillet is too small, like if you go up north, you catch a fish, you fillet it so that you can bring it back home. If that fillet is not as big as a legally required fish, then you get in trouble. This one would allow you to fillet the fish as long as you have a time and date stamped picture that proves the fish was actually big enough when it had its head and its tail. So that's sort of the crowning achievement of legislation in Wisconsin today.
We are absolutely not going to do Badger Care on a podcast. We are for sure doing Filet-O-Fish on the podcast. That's all the time we have. Listeners can keep up with this story and more at thecentersquare.com. For Ben Youn, I'm J.D. Davidson. Thanks for listening, and please subscribe.
Enjoying our podcast? Your reviews help other listeners find our show. Please leave us a review on Apple Podcast, Spotify, or wherever you listen.